Hermione's Song, Chapter 9. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hermione walked Tonks back to her guest room on the third floor after dinner. After getting to Tonks' room, the young Aurors shut the door behind them for privacy.
So I heard from a couple of students that our mysterious doctor accompanied you to your Care of Magical Creatures class,
She said suggestively.
Give it a rest, Tonks.
Hermione sighed.
He's nice and cute, but I'm a student and he's a high-level covert Auror.
She pointed out.
He's probably just hanging around Harry, Ron, and I because of all the threats Harry faces.
She speculated.
I wouldn't be so sure, Hermione.
Tonks implied with a wink.
Speaking of the doctor, I didn't see him at dinner. Any idea where he might have gotten off to?
She prodded.
Honestly, Tonks, you're worse than Rita Skeeter,
Hermione teased, rolling her eyes.
I'm sure the doctor is just getting reacquainted with the other black cat that showed up today,
She told her. Tonks' ears perked up at the mention of another black cat at Hogwarts.
Who else did the Prime Minister send?
She inquired.
Oddly enough, the other cat is a relative of the doctor's. Or at least that's what she said. Personally, I don't see any family resemblance at all,
Hermione replied. Tonks tilted her head impatiently and drummed her fingers on the footboard of her bed.
Oh, sorry. I think her code name is Ace, but the doctor used her name. Dorothy McSomething or other,
She said, finally getting around to the name. Tonks grabbed Hermione by the arm.
Wait, Ace? As in Dorothy Ace McShane?
Tonks replied, not believing her ears, which had turned a bright purple with green spots in shock.
Unless there are two black cats using that name, yes.
Hermione replied, suddenly suspicious of the new arrival.
Why are you so surprised?
She asked.
We thought Ace McShane had been killed the same night as Harry's parents.
Tonks answered.
We haven't seen her since then. Wait until I tell Remus, he'll be thrilled,
She said, nearly vibrating with eagerness. Hermione, at seeing her friend happy over Ace's arrival, was gratefully relieved.
So, I take it you know her?
She asked, just to make sure they were on the same page. Tonks lifted up the hem of her robe and showed off her combat boots.
Who do you think gave me my first pair?
She asked, grinning mischievously. Hermione did some quick calculations and shook her head, confused.
That's weird. I thought everyone who grew up with a black cat was obliviated in regards to them,
She stated. Tonks looked insulted.
Just how old do you think I am? No, wait. Don't answer that.
She replied.
Ace was about 5 years older than Sirius. If I remember right, she was about 26 when I turned 8.
She said, in an attempt to correct any false impressions. Hermione blinked a couple of times, trying to take that in.
She looks like she's about 25. So either she ages really well, or she's had some work done,
She speculated.
Wow, I've got to get her to share her beauty secrets with me.
Tonks promised herself. Her face suddenly went blank as another thought took hold.
Merlin's saggy balls. Ace probably doesn't know that it was Pettigrew who betrayed the Potters and then set up Sirius.
She exclaimed.
I've got to go find her. I'll see you later, Hermione.
She yelled over her shoulder as she ran out of the room. Hermione followed Tonks out of the room and waved at the retreating form of her friend. She walked along the flagstone hallway and then turned to take a stairwell on her right. Her head was too cluttered for her to return to the rowdy Gryffindor common room. She decided to go spend some time in the castle's enormous library, which was housed on the 4th floor. The silence of the library had always given her a measure of peace she couldn't quite explain. As she turned the corner leading into the enormous expanse of books, she heard the doctor's voice complaining loudly about the way they had been sorted. Judging from the echoes, Hermione figured that he must be in the magical artifact creation section. Smiling, without realizing it, she made her way through the tall, darkened silver oak shelves toward the sound of his voice. Blast it! Why can't they organize things the way they're supposed to be? The doctor moaned, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He had been roaming the shelves of the library the entire afternoon, looking for some indication as to how and why parts of Gallifreyan life had popped up on Earth.
Can I help you find something, Doctor?
Hermione offered. The doctor jumped and then put a hand over each of his hearts. "Vortex, you startled me," he exclaimed. When he had gotten his pulses back under control, he smiled charmingly at Hermione. "If you can help me, I would be forever in your debt, Miss Granger," he replied, bowing slightly. Hermione cocked her head, pursing her lips as she noticed his odd gestures and choice in explicatives when startled, chalking it up to black cats being stationed abroad for long periods of time.
"What are you looking for?"
she asked, partly distracted by how cute his smile was. "I'm looking for any text on the history of magic," the doctor told her. "So far, the only thing I've been able to find are books on making magical items, potion brewing, and an entire section devoted to Muggle studies," he complained. He raised an eyebrow at Hermione. "You lot do know that the majority of what's in those books is completely wrong, don't you? The Muggle studies, I mean. I haven't had time to try out any of the more interesting recipes I found in the other books," he rambled. Hermione chuckled and took the doctor's arm.
"Come on, I'll show you where the histories are kept,"
she said as she led him to the back of the library. When they reached the appropriate section, she let go of his arm and asked,
"What era are you looking for?"
"As far back as possible. I would like to see the earliest records of magic that you have," the doctor replied. Scowling in thought, Hermione tapped her chin while she decided which text would be the best. History was one of her favorite subjects, and she had managed to get through about a third of the books in this section. She walked back and forth along the shelves, pulling out books as she spoke.
"You can start with A History of Magic by Bathilda Bagshot. It's the most commonly used resource. After that, I would suggest A Guide to Medieval Sorcery and Hogwarts: A History,"
she suggested. She handed him the 3 books that combined were nearly a foot and a half thick. The doctor took the books from Hermione and brought them over to a table near the end of the shelves. Scowling, he dropped the books on the table with a loud thump. "And I thought my instructors gave out a lot of reading assignments," he said absently.
"Actually, only A History of Magic is required reading. I read the others for fun,"
Hermione admitted. The doctor narrowed his eyes while looking from the books to Hermione. "Really? For fun?" he asked. Hermione squared her shoulders, getting ready for the argument she and Ron had been having since they met. What the doctor said next erased all of her tension and brought a huge smile to her face. "That's absolutely brilliant! You have no idea how refreshing it is to meet another person interested in learning stuff for the sheer fun of it," he exclaimed. Hermione dropped into the nearest chair.
"I know exactly how you feel,"
she replied.
"I just don't understand why my friends can't see that I'm actually enjoying myself when I'm learning something new,"
she shared.
"I'd probably faint if I saw Ron get excited over something scholastic,"
she joked. Sighing, the doctor nodded his head and sat in the chair opposite her. "Several of my friends over the years have acted the same way. They just didn't get why I became giddy when we ended up someplace new," he said. He cocked his head to the side and took an appraising glance at Hermione. "So, Miss Granger, apart from history, what other subjects do you like?" he inquired.
"I like just about all of them. Care of magical creatures, transfiguration, potions, charms, herbology, astronomy, arithmancy, ancient runes, and defense against the dark arts," she replied. "Pretty much the only class I can't stand is divination. I think fortune-telling is just a bunch of rubbish. And don't get me started on prophecies," she fumed. The doctor laughed, unable to control his mirth. "I've lost count years ago of how many prophecies I've ended up ruining," he chuckled. He looked back down at the stack of huge books on the table. "I wish I had been as dedicated to my studies as you seem to be to yours," he sighed. "Things would probably have been a lot smoother for me if I had," he admitted. Deciding to change the subject, the doctor said, "Judging from your name, I would guess your parents are also avid readers," he surmised. "Although, you don't really strike me as the queen from A Winter's Tale. You seem much more vibrant," he told her. "Thanks,"
Hermione replied, blushing.
"Which of his characters do I remind you of?"
she asked, curious to know his answer. It took the doctor less than a second to make a decision. "Beatrice, of course," he replied, earning him another broad smile from Hermione. "You're both strong, quick-witted women who refuse to settle for anything but the best from those around them. That kind of trait forces others to go beyond their comfort zone and become more than they were," he explained. Hermione basked in the compliment.
Much Ado About Nothing is my favorite Shakespearean play,
she admitted, pleased that he had chosen her favorite character. She leaned back and looked at the doctor. She thought about how full of life he was, and his equally sharp wit.
So, if I'm Beatrice, does that make you Benedict?
She allowed herself to wonder. They spent the next couple of hours talking about their favorite authors and books. Hermione was pleasantly surprised to find a wizard who enjoyed science fiction. The doctor had told her a few amusing stories about his favorite authors. She particularly liked the one about Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke on the golf course. When she told him that she was partial to Robert Heinlein, the doctor looked away sharply, pretending to study the shelf behind him. Hermione thought she heard him muttering something about damn multiverse theories that are way too accurate for a human to come up with. An intricate cuckoo clock on the wall near them squawked 8 times. Hermione spun around to stare at it, taken by surprise at how late it had become. She turned around to face the doctor, a slight hint of disappointment evident in her eyes.
8 o'clock, the library is closing. We don't want to be caught by Madame Pince after hours,
she warned. The doctor agreed and picked up the 3 books Hermione had recommended he read. They said their goodbyes at the entrance to the library, and as the doctor walked away, he didn't notice Hermione pause for a moment to watch him, a wistful smile on her lips. She shook herself and hurried off to the Gryffindor dormitory.